of course, I've mentioned previously that you co-authored a book on the alleged Palestinian right of return, which is called the War of Return. So I've heard this argument being, stated in different forms, but here goes. I'm sure I'm sure you've mentioned it in your book, which I'm reading right now. So Israel has a law of return, which permits a person of Jewish descent from around the world to be citizens of Israel upon landing in the country. That's why it conducted this operation to rescue Jews from Ethiopia, and they have been integrated into the land of Israel. And you do not advocate for the equivalent right or law for the Palestinian state if there is a Palestinian state. Um, so the argument goes, well, let's say you are a Jewish person living in Eastern Europe or the US, and you've only known Eastern Europe or the US for generations to come. And so if you land in Israel, then sure, you're an Israeli, despite the fact that you speak no modern Hebrew. Well, compare that to a person of Arab/Palestinian descent who, in the War of 1948/49, was expelled from the land forcefully or voluntarily, and now is living maybe in the United States with his children and grandchildren. So, are you saying that that man does not deserve to return to his righteous homeland compared to, say, the Brooklyn Jewish person who has never known the land itself? So, yeah.
So when you asked the question, you said law and then right, and that is exactly the issue. The state of Israel, like every modern state, has an immigration law. Our law is called the law of return. We could call it whatever, but every state in the world has an immigration law. In many ways, you could argue that almost the fundamental basis of sovereignty and statehood is the ability to control your borders and to decide who comes in and who becomes a citizen. Now, every country in the world, and Israel is not special, has immigration laws that determine who can come in and who can be a citizen. And all countries in the world, and again, Israel is no exception, privilege some backgrounds, groups, people in the process of becoming citizens. So most countries will privilege some form of legacy, heritage, language. Very few countries have completely neutral laws, let's say just based on skills. Most countries will privilege a connection with the culture and the country and the people. And that's what Israel does. Israel has a law that says that people of Jewish background and Jewish descent can become citizens of the Jewish state. I would very much hope for the day when the state of Palestine will have the same law for its people. When the state of Palestine can say, we have an immigration law that allows, for example, anyone of Palestinian descent to become a citizen of Palestine. So that would be wonderful and that would be great. And I support it, and many Israelis support it. And actually, this was offered to the Palestinians several times. Establish your own state, and then you could have whatever immigration laws. But that's not what the Palestinians want. The Palestinians don't want a law of return in a state of Palestine. What they claim is that they possess a right, which they don't, but they claim it, to settle inside the state of Israel. They don't want a law for the state of Palestine. They want to settle inside the state of Israel. This is why, for example, you have about 2.5 million people who live in Palestine. They live in the West Bank, in Gaza, under the Palestinian Authority, under Hamas, but they don't view themselves as settled. They claim that they have a right to settle inside Israel. So it's very important to differentiate what they see and they want, and what Israel has and what I one day hope Palestine will have. The reason, of course, that they demand this idea, which in the book we show is neither a right nor a return, is that this is their way of sending the message that, as far as they're concerned, the war against the Jewish state started over a century ago is still not over, and that they refuse to accept it as over. One of the things we do in the book is we go throughout the 20th century with empires collapsing and nation states rising based on the principle of self-determination. Of course, this was a very bloody process. As empires collapsed, nations arose, decolonization took place. A lot of people fought each other over the new nations, the new borders. We had 2 world wars and numerous regional wars and civil wars. All the people who moved and were expelled and fled in the wars have moved on. The Palestinians are unique in the world in their refusal to move on, and in the fact that many in the West indulge them in their refusal to move on through this organization called UNRWA, that keeps alive for Palestinians the idea that the war of 1948 is not over, and that they could still win it to their cause, which was always no Jewish state in any borders. So it's not an innocent idea. It was an idea established immediately after the war as one of the ways by which the war could continue. I very much hope for the day when there will be a state of Israel next to a state of Palestine, and each one of them will have its own immigration law, allowing people who share similar backgrounds and cultures to become citizens of their respective states.